Curious about the hidden stories of courage and sacrifice that shaped our nation? Today, we're diving into one of the darkest yet most heroic chapters in Philippine history, the Bataan Death March. It's a story you might know, but we're revealing the lesser-known tales of survival, resilience, and self-sacrifice that often go untold. Before we begin, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Here on Philippine History, we dig deep into the stories that shaped the Philippines. Now, let's step back to 1942, when World War II hit our shores, and uncover the untold human stories of the Bataan Death March. 1. Setting the stage, the fall of Bataan. To understand the gravity of the Bataan Death March, we first need to go back to the early days of World War II in the Pacific. After the Japanese Empire attacked Pearl Harbor in December 1941, they quickly turned their attention to the Philippines, then a U.S. colony. By April 9, 1942, after months of fierce fighting, the combined forces of Filipino and American soldiers were forced to surrender to the Japanese on the Bataan Peninsula. It was a brutal defeat. Thousands of Filipino and American troops, weak from hunger, disease, and exhaustion, laid down their arms. But their suffering was far from over. Instead of being treated as prisoners of war under the Geneva Convention, they were subjected to one of the most infamous forced marches in history. The Bataan Death March began almost immediately after the surrender. Around 76,000 soldiers, including 66,000 Filipinos and 10,000 Americans, were forced to march roughly 65 miles from Mariveles to San Fernando under the blistering sun. Along the way, they faced inhumane conditions: no food, little water, and the constant threat of death if they dared to stop or slow down. But amidst the horror of this march, there were stories of remarkable bravery and incredible acts of humanity. Today, we'll share the experiences of some of these unsung heroes who found ways to resist, survive, and even save others in the face of unimaginable hardship. 2. Acts of kindness amidst cruelty. The story of Salvatore Giunta. One lesser-known hero of the Bataan Death March is Salvatore Giunta, an Italian-American soldier who became a symbol of resilience and kindness. As he trudged along the harsh, sun-baked roads of Bataan, Giunta witnessed fellow soldiers collapse from exhaustion and dehydration. The Japanese guards, known for their cruelty, often beat or bayonet anyone who fell behind. Despite the risks, Giunta found small ways to help his comrades. He would secretly pass rationed water to those too weak to continue, risking his life each time. In one unforgettable instance, Giunta spotted a Filipino soldier, barely conscious, lying on the side of the road. While the guards were momentarily distracted, Giunta knelt beside him and pressed his last piece of dried fruit into the soldier's hand, whispering words of encouragement before being forced to move on. This small act of defiance and compassion speaks to the humanity that persisted even in the darkest of times. Stories like Giunta's remind us that even in the midst of a living nightmare, there were those who chose to put the lives of others before their own. 3. Filipino guerrillas. Resistance in the shadows. While many soldiers were being marched to their deaths, some Filipino fighters managed to evade capture and join the guerrilla resistance in the mountains of Bataan. These brave men and women, familiar with the terrain, became a thorn in the side of the occupying Japanese forces, launching surprise attacks and sabotaging supply lines. Among these guerrillas was Captain Juanito Fernandez, a former officer in the Philippine Army who refused to accept defeat. After narrowly escaping capture during the surrender, he led a small band of fighters deep into the Bataan jungles. There, they staged ambushes on Japanese convoys, gathering vital supplies for those hiding in the mountains. Captain Fernandez and his guerrillas also played a crucial role in providing intelligence to the Allied forces, passing along information about Japanese troop movements and operations. These small but significant acts of resistance gave hope to those who were struggling to survive the brutal occupation. They became a reminder that even in defeat, the fight for freedom was far from over. Their actions may not have been enough to change the course of the war immediately, but they kept the spirit of resistance alive, offering a glimmer of hope to the suffering soldiers on the march. For those who managed to escape the march and join the resistance, the guerrilla fighters of Bataan became their only lifeline. 4. The Angels of Bataan, a nurse's compassion. Another group whose bravery is often overlooked are the Filipino and American nurses, known as the Angels of Bataan, who continued to care for the sick and wounded even after the fall of Bataan. When the Japanese took control, these nurses faced the same brutality as the soldiers, but continued to fulfill their duties in makeshift hospitals and camps along the march route. One of these courageous nurses, Lieutenant Maria Valenzuela, worked tirelessly to treat the wounds of the men around her. She improvised with the little resources available, using tree leaves and wild herbs to dress wounds and boiling water in makeshift pots to create a semblance of sterile conditions. Despite facing hunger, exhaustion, and constant threats from the Japanese, Maria never gave up on her mission. Maria would sneak into the camp at night, delivering words of encouragement to the prisoners and sharing small pieces of food she managed to scavenge. Her courage in the face of danger left a lasting impact on the men she treated, many of whom credited her with giving them the strength to survive. The stories of the Angels of Bataan serve as a testament to the power of compassion, even when surrounded by brutality. They remind us that heroism comes in many forms, not only through combat, but through selfless care for others. 5. Surviving the March, the tale of Pedro Flores. For Pedro Flores, a Filipino soldier from Pampanga, surviving the Bataan Death March required more than just physical strength. It demanded mental resilience. As he marched alongside thousands of his comrades, he witnessed friends and fellow soldiers fall and never rise again. The stench of death filled the air, and the relentless sun beat down on his back. But Pedro knew he couldn't give up. He kept his mind focused on his family, imagining his wife and children waiting for him back home. It was these thoughts that gave him the strength to take each step, no matter how painful. Along the way, he learned to improvise, chewing on leaves to stave off hunger and catching rainwater in his helmet during brief moments of respite. One night, when the guards were distracted, Pedro and a few others made a desperate escape into the thick jungles nearby. They navigated through the darkness, relying on their knowledge of the land to evade capture. 4 days, they survived on wild fruits and plants until they found a guerrilla camp hidden deep in the mountains. Pedro's story is a reminder that hope and determination can be powerful tools in the fight for survival. He never forgot the horrors he witnessed on the march, but he also never stopped believing that he could survive to see a free Philippines once again. 6. The Legacy of Bataan, Remembering the Heroes. The Bataan Death March remains one of the most tragic events in the history of the Philippines and World War II, but it's also a story of incredible bravery and sacrifice. Around 10,000 soldiers, both Filipinos and Americans, died during the march, succumbing to starvation, exhaustion, and violence. Yet, the courage of those who survived and the acts of kindness and solidarity shown during those dark days have left an enduring legacy. Today, April 9th is commemorated in the Philippines as a Raw and Kagitingan Day of Valor, a day to honor the sacrifices of the soldiers who fought in Bataan and those who endured the Death March. It's a time to remember the untold stories of resilience and heroism that emerged from this dark chapter, ensuring that their struggles are never forgotten. The Bataan Death March teaches us that even in the face of overwhelming cruelty, the human spirit can endure. It reminds us that heroes are not defined by their victories, but by their refusal to surrender their dignity and humanity in the most trying of circumstances. If you were moved by the untold stories of the Bataan Death March, don't forget to subscribe to Philippine History. Here, we explore the remarkable courage and resilience that have defined the Filipino people throughout history. Leave a comment below with your thoughts or share a story you'd like us to cover in our next episode. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time as we continue to delve into the rich and complex history of the Philippines.